everyone. So yes, as Professor Leclercq Vandelannoitte said, this is a research resulting from my master thesis under the supervision of Aurélie Leclercq Vandelannoitte. And the research I will present to you is the ethical issue raised by the pervasiveness of quantified self technologies and a Foucauldian analysis of this normopathy phenomenon. So yeah, as we said, this is my first presentation of at a conference. I just discovered the world of research, and through my thesis about the same topic, the normopathy phenomenon, towards the increasing presence of quantified self technologies in the daily life. And the research is still in progress, and we introduced the Foucauldian conceptual frame to shed light on the normopathy phenomenon. Firstly, Martin said that quantified self refers to the practice of regularly collecting data about oneself, then storing and analyzing it to produce statistics and other data such as images related to body function and daily habits. So this is the definition of quantified self. And the quantified self terms come initially from a community created in 2007 by Gary and Wolf, a community promoting self-knowledge through numbers. And the goal was to exchange data about oneself, quantified self data. And the development of digital, mobile, and wearable technology has led the emergence of an incredible amount of data. And such data are increasingly generated, collected, stored, and analyzed by and through individuals' technology uses, and that produce statistic, new data, and form of quantification, leading to the birth of the quantified self phenomenon, the QS phenomenon. Quantified self practices have long been considered as ways of self-improvement, as individuals are now able to deploy sensors and devices that help them to measure and improve their own health and behavior. And there are also been a growing interest for this research trend in the last few years, especially in the field of MIS, for example, or computing. About the normopathy phenomenon itself. So firstly, what is the normopathy? What is normopathy? So it refers to the tendency to conform excessively to social norms of behavior without being able to express one's subjectivity. So there is a risk of reduction of the individual to his data, so to the calculatory fact, that will lead to a potential excessive conformation process to emerging or pre-established social and health standards, without taking into consideration the variety of behavior and life experience of individuals. So it leads to a progressive constitution of standard of good health defined according to performance and efficiency criteria set by technology, and only by technology, by, for example, for QS technology, by connected objects and algorithms, such as, I don't know, connected watch or devices like that. The research objective was to understand the normalization process emerging from the use of QS technologies and the ethical issues raised by this normalization process. To do so, we will use the conceptual framework of Michel Foucault, who is a French philosopher. And the concept of norm is particularly central in Foucault's thought. Foucault is also known as the philosopher of norms and normalization. Indeed, Foucault studied the emergence of norms in our modern world, conceptualized as a novel form of power. There is also a normalization or normation process, it depends on the writing, That is the production of norms of behavior, and it's at the heart of the discipline. And the goal of this production of norms is to induce self-disciplines. It means that, for example, a behavior could be considered normal when it's conform to such a norm of behavior. And in contrast, a behavior is viewed as abnormal when it is not conform, so it is deficient or inferior to the pre-established norms, which is then considered, this norm considered as a standard and an ideal to be achieved. And so individuals that are considered as, for Foucault, individual bodies, are continuously evaluated and measured against the norm, and thus they will constitute docile bodies who get disciplined because they conform to norm, or they are afraid to not conform to norm, so they will do the most to conform. About the research methodology and the data collection, we did an exploratory qualitative research. So firstly, an ethnography, because the ethnography has emerged in recent years as one of the most appropriate methods for analyzing virtual communities. And QS is initially a virtual community, so that makes sense. Because it makes possible, this method makes possible to observe the interaction of online people in relation to the subject, so to the creation of norms, without being intrusive. So we studied and we analyzed users' behavior and exchanges on 2 quantified self Facebook group, which include more than 8,000 members, and as well on the very active official forum for the Quantified Self movement. And we also did 20 qualitative semi-structured interviews with different QS users. Thanks to this data, and we observed in the online community that there is an emergence of norms as technology tend to prescribe ways of acting and behaving. So people are measured, compared against a norm that implicitly emerge as the norm of reference. There is a sharing process of norms among community of users, but people are not necessarily aware of this norm. They contribute to this norm, but they are not necessarily aware of it. And when questioned through interview, for example, about these standards, respondents do not necessarily see the negative, potentially critical or ethical issues of these norms. Some of them consider this norm as good norms of behavior that must be followed. Others consider that self-tracking only aggravates the societal normalization problem and serves to carry norms. It means that the societal problems of normalization already exist, and self-tracking and QS technologies only serve to carry these norms. And some even go so far to say that self-quantification technology only exists through and because of this norm. Because there is this normalization, societal normalization problem, people want to conform to these norms, so they will use quantified self technologies. We can say the phenomenon of normopathy associated with quantified self is present and is mainly justified by confidence about the user's discomforts when they do not respect norms defined by quantification tools. As Foucault explained, like user could be guilty when they do not comply with standards. There is a development of an excessive form of conformism to the technology-generated standards. And this tendency to comply with the standards leads to a decision-making delegation and a loss of control to the benefit of the machine. It means that we are no longer listening to our bodies, but only to data generated by our connected devices. And that's because of a strong normalization process resulting from this conformism, users are no longer in control of their decision. As technology increasingly dictates through algorithm-based specification what they must or must not do and how they should behave or not behave. And as a result, most users no longer listen to their bodies, but only to numbers in a desire to quantify life. The quantification life is considered as a new episteme, so a new regime of truth. And such numbers are supposed to reflect the individual state of health, while they may not be adapted to their physical condition. So to a certain extent, our findings highlight that users tend to lose some of their responsibilities regarding their way of behaving in such a way that the responsibility that every single individual has over his daily choices seems delegated to technology and to data coming from technological devices. So this study contributes to the literature on the ethical issues of QS technology by highlighting how the normalization process related to the increasing pervasiveness of QS technologies in our daily life leads to the opening of the quantified self as a new episteme, a new regime of truth. And to conclude, we have identified also by discussing with people, by looking at exchanging on a Facebook group, for example, we have identified other ethical concerns that deserve attention because there is often few information on how a company will use the data collected, and the possibility that it may be resold to different entities is a threat to many users. Another interesting point is the accuracy and the reliability of the data. Because people can make self-diagnosis based only on their self-tracking data. And this can have two consequences. Either the user think is falsely in good health, or the user worries because some indicators tell him that he is not in good health. But is the data really accurate or not? That's a point that we should be aware. The question is, what should we do when we detect, for example, a person is eating trash food daily or is putting his health at risk? And we can wonder if company should monitor the data they have about us, about our daily life, and if necessary, alert the competent authorities. So thank you for your attention, and maybe later so for the question.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you so much for your presentation. I'm sorry, a question. Is the right way to pronounce your name is Simon?
Simon
yes, Simon, not Simon. Yes, I'm sorry about it.
It could be okay.
Yes. Okay. Thank you so much for the presentation. And yes, I hope we have enough time for the questions a little bit later. So I would now give the word to Carlos Montemayor.